Hello, my name is Crystal Cheney, and I'm in the Adult Development and Aging class, and this is Psychology 3050-01, Fall 2012. I did this. This presentation is on the book The Psychiatric Review by Harry Stack Sullivan, and it was written in 1953. It gives advice of um, on how to be a good interviewer, and this is the book here. That's Zach Sullivan, and this book gives advice about how to be a good interviewer. I read chapter 7, pages 130 to 172. So, it says that interviewer should pay attention to their own anxiety as well as the interviewer's anxiety. And Sullivan describes that anxiety exists because of social interactions, and through social interactions we develop personifications of ourselves. We tend to feel anxiety when reflecting on the bad me, which is described by Sullivan as the negative traits one has that are usually hidden from others. And an example of a bad me trait is like stinginess or irresponsible, or someone is irresponsible. And then there's the good me traits, which are traits that people love about themselves and they want to flaunt to others. And some examples of those are giving, caring, and being responsible. Sullivan also discusses how personality is divided into the self system and the rest of the personality. He describes that the self system as the matters of appraisal, esteem, respect, difference, and prestige, all of which are dealt with when dealing with interviewing a stranger. Both people, the interviewer and the interviewee, are concerned with these traits. The interviewer's self-system is always there, but it will vary in degrees throughout the interview. The self-system of the stranger is said to be always viewing the other person as an enemy. Sorry. And they're taking like the interviewee is always like taking precautions. So the goal when interviewing someone is to create balance and being comfortable to talk to one another and open up to each other. My detailed inquiry. In relation to Sullivan's heuristic classification of infancy, childhood, the juvenile era, pre-adolescence and early adolescence, and late adolescence, and then adulthood, my interviewee's detailed inquiry goes a little like this. She is 23 years old. Her infancy began in Tondo, Manila, Philippines. And when I typed this into Google, I got these pictures here. Um, but they're in Tondo, Manila, and this is where no, but she was born in Tondo, Manila, and this is where she was raised by her grandmother. She has one sibling, a brother, and she is the oldest. Her mother and father are still living, and as stated before, the first couple of years of my interviewee's life, she was raised by her grandmother. My client is married and has been for 3 years and 2 months. As far as her education, she is currently a junior in college, and between those years of taking a brief from college, she had a couple of jobs that she realized were mainly food jobs. And we laughed about that because I know her a little bit and she can eat. But it was just a coincidence that she mainly had food jobs. Well, she thought it was. I thought it wasn't. In her childhood, she did not have a speech disorder. She did not have a speech disorder, but when she moved to the United States, she did not speak a lick of English, and she believed that she taught herself to speak English. So she may think that she did that, but I believe that her parents helped out, like played a huge role in her learning to speak English. In her pre-adolescence era, she had a best friend named Cassandra who was Caucasian, and I drew a connection to my client telling me Cassandra's race because when she was young, she could not fully accept her race. She is half Filipina and African American, and she was friends with Cassandra because she was her neighbor, and Cassandra did not see my client as any different from herself, just as a friend or a playmate. And this was a warp I found that it connected to her personified self because now she states that her culture makes her feel good about herself and that she can now identify herself as, as part of it. So moving on to her juvenile era, Sullivan describes it as a time where you engage in games which represent a certain cooperation. And so my interview disclosed that in this era of her life, she was a tomboy and she enjoyed playing video games with the guys. She had to prove herself to the guys that she could play, so she was cooperative in sharing the game sets and open to playing and competing with the guys. She had a good attitude towards games, and she played sports as well, more so basketball, and today she still continues to play basketball on a competitive level. In her juvenile era during grammar school, she was not too fond of it. She went to school in the Philippines, and the schooling was only 3 hours a day, and that is including having a lunch break, and a recess. So I believe she came to see that there was something wrong with that schedule, the schooling schedule in the Philippines when she started school in the United States. I would identify her into the undoubtedly frivolous where she stood at in college, like where she identified herself with that in college because when she was in college, she hung out with individuals who like who would be considered the wrong crowd, and she indulged in delinquent behavior with them. My client's sex preference is males, but I found that out. I didn't even have to ask her that because she is married to a man, but she became married before her college days. She does not regret making the decision of being married early, but she wished she could have waited. At the time, it was something she wanted though. At an early age, I believe she was introduced to drugs such as cigarettes. Um, Her mother smoked, and sometimes her mother and her would smoke together after she came back from the Air Force. Being off on her own, she then began experimenting and frequently using other narcotics. And because my client is still young, she's age 23, and she still indulges in these things, and I believe she is still considered to be in the adolescent stage of her life. Finding out that my client was once raped when she was younger in the Philippines, I connected that to having something to do with why today she is highly sexually active and very engaged when the topic of sex comes up. She is also married and still young, so those are other reasons why she is probably fascinated with the topic and in love with the act of sex. In relation to my client's personified self, things she disparages from herself are when she was younger and she didn't like how when she was younger she tried to do too much. Her dad always told her, be yourself before you are by yourself trying to get back to yourself. Now she doesn't like that she has to or want someone to always be there for her. And I'm talking about like love, that perspective. This is like the be yourself. In conclusion, I saw anxiety when my client talked about her marriage life. We actually did not discuss it too much, and the signs of dysfunction, the many unhappy moments are why I believe we did not discuss it as much. Also, she showed anxiety when mentioning she was raped, and I did not ask too many questions about that in like detail. The main goal of having a balance between the interviewer and the interviewee, I believe, was accomplished. Um, in the interview, I was laughing. We were both laughing, and then we had serious moments as well. And we were both open with each other. I gave examples of situations that related to her in order to keep a balance um, in the conversation or the interview. If there was something I could change about the interview, it would be the time frame. I had to give the time frame. I was It was long, but not long enough because in which we had two sessions. So the first session she was very detailed in her answers, and the second session she was more rushed for time and trying to get some schoolwork done of her own. But overall, I think it was a good experience, and I really did enjoy this project. Thank you.